To make a knot on the end of your thread, the easiest way that I find to do this is to take your end of your thread, to hold it in place with your fingers, and it's almost like the French knot method. You're wrapping it around 2 or 3 times, you pinch it with your finger, keeping them in place, and then you pull through, and that's how you create a knot. So next part, once you've got the belly, snout, cheeks and ears sewn on, is to sew the eyes on and the little nose. So I'm going to sew the eyes on first. You'll see here the positioning of them. So I've put them in position first, and then I'm going to remove one. And you've got 2 options to attach these eyes. You could use the needle felting method, or you could sew it on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure this with a French knot. So I'm just going to move it slightly and make a hole with the needle and the felt, so that I know the position that I'm going to place the eye. Just widen that slightly. So now I go to the back, and as you can see there, I can see where that hole is. I've already made a knot in my yarn, so I'll pull that up. Right, so now take the sewing needle, and I'm just going to place that as close as I can to the middle. It doesn't need to be exact, and then pull that down and pull the eye there. I'm going to secure this with a French knot. To do a French knot, you take your needle, you hold it horizontally and also close to the end of the thread, and you go 1, 2, 3. You then take the end of the needle and you place it in a slightly different spot from where you brought the needle and thread out. So now I'm going to take this end here, and I'm just going to pull it slightly down, and I'm going to push the needle through. I'm going to put my finger, my nail there, and then that holds the French knot in place. And then I'm just going to pull the thread slowly, still holding the French knot in place, and there we go. So that's how you do a little French knot to hold the eyes in place. If you were making this for a child, I wouldn't recommend using the little black bits of felt. Just do a French knot or a few little embroidery stitches instead, so that it would be child-proof. So the next one, again, I just figure out the exact position, and these are quite small, so just move it over with your needle until you're happy with the placement. So I'm just going to move that out of the way slightly. Oops, start again, get that in position, move that. So again, I'm just winding it, widening. Where is it? I'm just winding it to make it just a little bit bigger. And then as you can see here, I can see where that is. So I'll take my thread through. Again, I'm just going to put it through roughly the middle. It doesn't need to be exact. Pull that, pull the bit around the felt there. Again, doing it pretty close to the felt. I'm going to go do a wrap 3 times, and then I'm going to put my needle back in. You can even put your finger there to help your ends. Put it through in a different place. So again, I'm going to tighten the loops. I'm going to hold them in place, and then I'm going to pull through it. And there we have it. So we have 2 French knots plus the bit of felt for the eyes. French knots on their own would be fine for it. So that's that section done. The next one is the nose. Now you'll see here from the actual design, the nose is kind of quirky. It's not perfectly straight. This is a handmade item, it's not supposed to be perfect. So you just fiddle around until you get the nose in a position that you're happy with. That's about right. Again, just move it about until you get the positioning right. I think that's okay. So I'm going to hold that in place with my finger. Just going to move the needle, and I'm just going to poke the needle up until it comes through. And as for all the other felt pieces, I'm just going to do a little running stitch, and I'm using a stabbing motion running stitch. If you used the technique of running your needle back and forward like that, your stitches would be larger, but I just want little stitches since the shapes of the felt are so little. There we go. So it doesn't take long to do this, and I've found that it's quite relaxing. So I've got different scarves that I've been die cutting out. So I've got like a leopard print one. The other ones that I'm making is zebra print, and that's for a member of my family. It's part of the symbol, the zebra print. Right. Having trouble seeing where I was there. Let's see. Okay, so I'm working down the way. So if that happens to you and you can't see where your thread is, just go to the back, bring it up there. There we go. Just move it over slightly. I hope this is going to be okay. I've just realised I haven't put the light on for this video. Hopefully it'll be fine. I'm just going to check in the back that I've went round. Yeah. Just going to check that it's all in place and I've went round. Yeah, so that's the nose sewed on. So to secure your ends at the back, you've got these little stitches here. So take your needle and you pull it through, and then that creates a little loop. You then take your needle again, you put your thread through, and this time the loop that you've just seen, new loop that you've created, you pull that, put your finger on your knot, and then pull it until it's tight. So that's your little knot made. Now there's already pieces of felt here, so to secure the end even further, I can put it just through. It's about 1/2 centimetre worth of the felt, and always check your needle hasn't come through, and then just pull like that, and then trim that end, and that will mean you'll have less knots on the back of it, and it'll be more secure. There we go. So that's the front of the bear done. All the felt shapes are sewn. So the next stage is to take your little bear. I've done running stitches there. The smaller bits like the ears, cheeks, definitely do straight stitch, but if you want, you could do a blanket stitch on the belly and around the snout. I'm going to use a blanket stitch to sew this up next. When you've got a felt shape, always have a look and see. You want to leave a straightish area for stuffing. So this area here would be a good area for stuffing. So I'm going to start sewing in this corner and work my way around. And then I'll stop here, stuff the head, and then continue around. And when I get to there, I'm leaving about 1.5 inches. I'm going to stuff the rest of the bear and then sew that up. If you're going to have the bear as a dangling ornament, put in your window, or have it dangling from your mirror in your car, you can add a little ribbon and sew that in as you go along. So that's that stage of the little bear done. I've got the embroidery thread, and the length of the embroidery thread that I've made is from my hand holding it like this up to my shoulder, and I've done this double for a reason, so that I'll have less ends with knots in them. So the way to remove strands is just go that with your fingers. You take one strand of this. You only need one strand because I'm going to double it, which is why I've made the length so long. So just pinch it with your fingers and you'll see it bubbles up there, but just keep going. And if you find it tugs a little bit, and just bring it back down a little bit to loosen it, and then you pull again until you've got that strand of thread out. And this end here, it all unravels fine. So you've now got this really long bit of thread, and what you need to do is get the two ends together, and you use these two ends to actually thread the needle. So if you look at the other end of the thread, what's actually being created is a loop. So you'll be able to put your needle through that when you're doing blanket stitch around your felt shape. Oops. So I'm just going to get my needle. Thread that. Okay. So move this out of the way so you can see. Right. So I've got the two strands. So you take your needle, you take your thread, your loose end, have it going across your finger. You place the needle on there, taking your other finger, you press, and you put your nails quite as close as possible to the needle. See how it's quite tight there. Bring it up to the camera so it's quite tight. You then slide the needle off, and that little loop, you move the needle towards the thread, not the other way. And you then press the thread gently through. Oops, it came out, so I'll do that again. It was through, I just moved my hand away too early. Right. So I'm just putting it through there. Make sure you've got it pushed through enough. And that's the easiest way I find to thread a needle with embroidery thread. So now that I've got my yarn, embroidery thread, I'm going to pull it down a little bit. So you see here I've got just a small area that's just got the two strands. So I'll show you later on in the video. I'll speak about putting the different felt shapes on. So because I've got a loop here, I'm not going to have a knot. So I'm doing blanket stitch, so I can come up here, and then what to do is pull it through until your loop is almost there. Put your needle through and then pull like that, and that's made your first stitch. So you can then continue doing blanket stitch, and you haven't had to make a knot there, and it makes for a much neater thing. So the way to do blanket stitch is you put your needle through from the front to the back, you wrap your needle you wrap your thread around the needle and you pull through. I'll hold it there, and then you pull, as you pull it, that's the blanket stitch formed. The other way of holding it is to hold your thread like that. This is a much quicker way, and it takes practice to do, but I'm holding it there and I'm pulling it through, so I haven't had to wrap it around the needle. So again, this takes a little bit of practice, but once you get used to it, it's a much quicker way. It's a much quicker way of doing the blanket stitch. We'll see how I'm just going through that there. So you want to do blanket stitch all the way around and leave a gap for stuffing. So that's my hints and tips included. If you find you get a little knot with your embroidery thread, it's quite easy to take the knot out. One of the strands will make this loop go tighter, so it's a matter of finding out which strand it is. So you put the loop on your needle and you pull, and you'll see how it's going tighter there. So now you take the needle out, so you take the two ends and you pull, and then you go like that, and then your knot disappears, and that's how you get rid of a knot. I don't know where I learned this. I think I experimented as a child and managed to figure this out. So I used to do embroidery when I was younger. Never seen anyone else do this. I think this might be unique to me. So I'm going to thread this needle again. I'll show you how to do it again. You put the thread underneath, push it over, have it tight to the needle, pull the needle out, bring the needle there, and just push through, and then you can take your fingers and your nails to the strand and then just pull it. So there's two ways to get that done, to get that threaded. And now I'm just going to take my threads and I'm just going to smooth it out. And if you get any knots, I've already shown you how you deal with that. The thread's not going to be wasted. So now I've got a loop. So here, as I'm sewing this bare, you'll see, right, I've came to the end of this thread. It's too small to sew anymore. So I've done that blanket stitch. So I'm now going to come from the back and I'm going to put the needle through. And this will form a loop. If your thread is really short, you don't need to use the point. You can just put the eye of the needle through there and then pull. And then I've formed a little knot there. Just want to make sure that's tight enough. And then just take your ends and place it within your character that you're sewing. Always check it's not coming through the back. It is there, so I'll take that out and I'll put that through again. And you can always open the little felt character that you're doing and feel and make sure the needle's through. Just bring it there, pull the end, and then cut the thread. So I've already got this one threaded, and again we're using the loop technique so that we won't have lots of knots. To attach your new end of thread using the loop technique, all you need to do is just put it through the two strands of your last stitch. You pull it and then take that thread, pull it through there, and that's you ready to begin doing the blanket stitch again. So again, there's no knots. There wasn't a knot at that end and there isn't a knot at this end. Okay, so I've sewed the bare almost closed, left a little gap there. When I got to just under the arm there, I stuffed his head. I put a little bit of stuffing just in his arms, but not all the way down to the bottom. And also what I've been using is some lavender flower seed heads as well to give it a nice relaxing calming scent. All in, I'm probably use maybe by the time I add a little bit more, probably about 2 teaspoonfuls worth. So you just need a little bit. Too much lavender actually perks you up, so just a little bit of lavender is nice. So with the stuffing, this is polyfiber fill, it's toy stuffing. When it comes in the bag, it's like in clumps. So to make your toy nice and soft, I always recommend that you tease the fibres out like that, so you'll get a nice soft fluffy toy and you won't get any lumps and bumps. And it also means that your stuffing will go further as well. So if you find you've got any small areas, like for example this little leg here, if I wanted to add more stuffing, you can use a crochet hook or a knitting needle, and you can just push that stuffing down into that area there. I just want a little bit there. And just be careful not to go through your stitching, because it is possible to do that. So you can see there's a wee bit lavender in there. So I'll add a little bit more before I put the very last bit of stuffing in. And I find when you're putting the lavender in, and just use a little spoon. So put that up right there. This is the fluffy bit. The other one I've done is a pink one. So I'm also working on this one as well. But the brown bear is almost finished. So I'm just using my fingers to stuff that in. You don't want yours to add too much stuffing. If you add too much, it'll be too firm. You want it still to be soft and squishy. So I've just got a tiny little bit there. That's clearly got some stuffing. This just needs a little bit more stuffing in there. So I'm just going to use the knitting needle, and I'm just going to go in to the middle, and then I'm going to go like that and twist and just push that stuffing into that area there. So it's quite handy to have a knitting needle or a crochet hook. A pen is kind of too thick. So again, I've moved the stuffing, so I'm just going to push it about. I don't want any creases, but then I don't want them overstuffed. So I'm just going to add a bit more. So you keep going, keep stuffing your little bear until you're happy with them. Kind of want them to have a little plump tummy. I'll add a little bit more lavender. And then the next step is tiny little bit more stuffing, and then I'm going to sew him up the rest of the way. Well, you can, let's see, there we go. So if that was closed, you would see there's still a little bit like gap, so we'll just put a little bit more in. When I'm sewing this bit next, there, that's going to be enough. So I'm sewing this bit next. You just hold the felt together, and you can, if you want, you can put a little pin there if your lavender etc is falling out. So you just go along to the end and then finish off like I showed you, and put the yarn end to the inside, and then that's your little bear finished. I hope you found the hints and tips in this video useful. I'm going to be doing some fundraising for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome soon. So that's how he's got a zebra scarf.